Welcome to a very special Marvel movie talk. As always, I am Christian Bladt, and this installment, once again, I try to only bother him about once a year, and it's actually been closer to 2 years, so I feel all right taking up a little bit of this man's time. The great Chris Claremont, who we always start and say 17 years Uncanny X-Men and attendant books, but obviously there's such a larger body of work than that. Just that's the nice one to start with, Chris.
Well, thank you.
But much like anybody's favorite band who continues to put out albums, Cheap Trick puts out an album about every year, and whether anybody buys it or not, that's not the issue. But fortunately,
The
we're
Rolling
getting
Stones are still.
that's true. Yeah, their last album wasn't bad. I forget how many years ago it was. The Stones that you're talking about.
And Rick Jagger still looks like Rick Jagger. So there you go.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you've got him and Paul McCartney in their 80s, and
Not on
you
the
know,
Rolling Stones, you don't. But that would be an interesting team up.
I would watch that. Yeah, but I'm just saying, all these guys are still out there. The idea that that they're still doing it in their their later years, but
And leave us not ignore Spaceballs too.
that's true. It was good that they let us wait for that. And
Well, it might be. Look, it's they're factoring age into the film, so
yeah,
we
I,
not only get to see mature original cast, but their offspring.
well, I don't know if you had a chance to see the new Spinal Tap film, but
No, actually, we did
they
miss out on that.
definitely leaned into the fact that these guys are, of course, much older. And I would say it's one of those movies where the entire time you're like, I don't know that they needed to make this, but I'm glad they did because it was funny throughout.
Well, there you go. I
The
mean,
three of
that's the
them are
basic.
tremendous as always, and it was fun to visit with old friends. So
This is true.
and I think that there's a lot of that. And speaking of visiting with old friends, a very smooth segue to talking about Wolverine and Kitty Pryde, which just wrapped up a couple of months ago.
Hmm.
The first few issues are available for people to consume on Marvel Unlimited, but I assume that some kind of collection is in the works. But I was excited to hear about this. I've talked to you in the past, and since you and I last spoke, I actually got to talk to Al Milgram at great length about the original Kitty Pryde and Wolverine. And, he talked about having a wonderful experience on that, except he regretted being so honest in that the first issue, he didn't put Wolverine on the cover. And he felt like if he had, maybe people would have been a little bit more excited about the series. But I always loved that story. And this is almost, I don't know, an immediate postscript to the 1984, 1985 Kitty Pryde and Wolverine.
Yeah, it starts, technically speaking, in terms of story, it starts about 2.5, 3 days later.
Yeah. And it was definitely fun to read. And the standard versions of the covers of the entire series were all by the wonderful Alan Davis, who I know you've collaborated with a number of times, but perhaps again putting it at the top of the accolades
Hmm.
for Excalibur. And it was great to see him visiting with these characters. Of course, the comic book industry being what it is now, there are no shortage of variant covers,
Hmm.
I'm glad that they weren't out there when I was a kid, but this was one that jumped out at me. I guess this is a Todd Nauk. I don't actually know how to
Hmm.
say his name, but she's obviously no longer the Sprite code name. This outfit was very short lived, but it's kind of one of those things that sort of lives on. You have the Disco Dazzler costume, I think, much more popular than her blue costume in the later 80s. And a lot of people have a fondness for this look for Kitty.
Oh, well, I think, in retrospect, God help us, uh, the I wish we'd had an opportunity to just continue being, what's the basic word, creative, approaching Kitty's costumes from the perspective of someone in junior high,
Yeah.
a young kid from Chicago, thrown into a totally different real world life and the way she wants to cope with it on her own terms, which is in some respects being a little bit of a rebel, especially surrounded by all these giant guys compared to her. And the one woman is Aurora, who's, let's face it, functionally somewhere between a princess, if not more elevated, and a goddess. So she's trying to respond from her own perspective, a young suburban Chicago adolescent of that era, which means, from my perspective, trying to see if I could come up with a look for her. I mean, for me, I would have preferred going with a new outfit literally every issue, as outrageous as possible, much like this one. To drive everybody else more than a little bit crazy, because all Charlie wants is to have them wear their proper uniforms, and being grown-ups per se, they won't. They've got their own look, their own style. She's pushing boundaries. And I guess the sort of unfairness of it is that Rogue gets to play, who isn't technically that much older when she arrives, gets to do that because she has to live inside of an outfit. But Kitty didn't. She sort of got settled down fairly quickly. And I think, again, in retrospect, it would have been a lot more. It was very tempting. It should have been irresistibly tempting. It might have been a lot more fun to have fun with her and express with more visual eloquence the rebellious and hopefully humorous side of being barely adolescent.
Yeah, and sort of the way you're positioning this, it's almost like each issue you'd be like, okay, what crazy costume is Kitty going to have? It's sort of reminiscent, if you remember the Candice Bergen sitcom Murphy Brown. Every episode she had a different secretary, and it was a gimmick in a good way. Was yeah.
No, go on.
No. So I think that the idea of like, okay, and then it turns into, what does Paul Smith come up with versus what does John Romita Jr. come up with? Mark Silvestri, whoever's drawing the book at the time gets to kind of play in their own sandbox.
Except because of the events of these two miniseries, Kitty Wolverine and Wolverine Kitty, all of that goes away.
Yeah,
I mean I think if we had followed John Byrne's vision of the character, whether he approved of this direction or not, yeah, I think that was something that we could have played with, or that could have been played with for a number of years. The part of the reason I think it would have possibly been nicer to go the outrageous route in the beginning is so that when we run into these two miniseries and at the end of it, well, right at the start of Wolverine Kitty, he just flat out tells her, no, you're not a kid anymore. You'll never be a kid anymore. You're, what can I say, a ninja, a ninja assassin. You're something that no one will ever see coming, because who expects a 13-year-old ninja assassin? Well, obviously people in Japan might, but
sure. But in Westchester County, they might not.
No, I mean, in the superhero realm, no. But she could never, dressing like that as a disguise, maybe, but it would never ring it true. And it would definitely never ring true in her heart, because that part of her life Ogun killed it.
Yeah, and it's it's diving into this new series, it's easy for me to have kind of put aside just what that experience was for her. So it was nice to sort of get reacquainted with the idea of like, she went through something really terrible and found a part of herself that honestly probably didn't exist, the dark recesses of who she was. And, just sort of this two-pronged attack of her and Logan in, what gets put in front of them.
Well, that's why the opening scene is there to express to readers from her perspective. Well, because Logan's narrating it from his as well, but from her perspective, she doesn't. Her response, she wants out. She doesn't want, if not simply of this character, this part of her that Ogun has warped, but of the X-Men altogether. This isn't a life. This, as she says, it isn't fun anymore. Yeah, save the universe. Help save the universe twice. Big deal.
Yeah.
I would know. I mean, being possessed by the brood is one thing. Almost dying like that is not. I mean, the brilliance of Paul Smith's perception of the characters is when Peter Rasputin comes in to check her, to see how she is in the starship. She's in the most appropriate for nightgown you can imagine, because she's facing a fate worse than death, and she's holding on to everything that makes her life valid that she can, coming back to Earth and saving the world, hurrah. And then it all her personal world falls apart. Her father turns out not to be the father she thought he was. And the consequence of that throws her into the embrace of Ogun, which essentially destroys every childhood Chicago aspect of her life that existed. And while Logan helped her deal with that, escape from it, overcome it, some things will never be forgotten. And this is what this story is, that story.
Yeah, and I think that why Kitty is such a rich character, and again, I've mentioned this in the past that I start reading the X-Men. I guess I was about 7 years old, and so that's obviously the character that I quickly identify with. My second favorite book was Power Pack a little bit later, because I was like, oh, these are kids, and as I grow up, Kitty doesn't really, just very slowly. She grows up a little tiny bit, and what I love is sort of the different aspects of her personality. You're talking about the ninja, but there was a line in issue 4 of this series that I jotted down, and she points out, "I'm from Chicago. Call me Gene Joke again and I'll punch you right in the face." And, she can back it up. A 13, 14-year-old might tell you they're going to punch you in the face. If Kitty punches you in the face, it's really going to hurt.
Well, but the reason the phrase punch you in the face is there because, no, I mean, if she was going to go after Zoe, whatever, what's her face, and punched her, that would kill her. So she's just going to haul off and whack her, but she's not going to use her fighting knowledge. But this is, again, one of those frustrating moments where a 6-issue series would have been so much more convenient. Sure. Because I could have spent a whole issue dealing with the two girls and their new lives. Yeah. And having the restoration to normalcy, keep you on theoretically on the edge, keep the readers on the edge of their seats a little bit longer. I never saw this cover.
So this is a variant for
No, I
our
know that. I
for
just
what I'm telling our audience. For our audience, this is a variant for issue one, and some people are just listening. And I guess this is it's the same artist as the interiors. He did a couple of alternates. And I
that's
don't know
very
how you
cool.
say Damien's last name. I looked up the pronunciation, and but Cousier. That sounds French, and I'm sure it's Spanish, but so yeah, this is one that I saw because when you look at these things on Marvel Unlimited, you can just click on variant covers. I never even saw this one on the stands, but it's
No.
Kitty as Shadow Cat
Hmm.
in that specific garb, and we have Lockheed. A very detailed. Lockheed is not usually so well detailed, so this is a very nice image. I thought.
I could go off on such a tangent in that respect, but we don't have enough time.
Well, we never have enough time,
Well,
but
no, but if we had 3 days, it wouldn't be enough time.
I see.
But no, I think that's for me why one of the seminal conceptual moments in the series is, I think, in issue 4, might be, where Kitty, she's saying, "Oh, you've got all the powers now. You can walk through walls, you can do this, you can do that, and I'm a blonde." Wow.
So, and
And
yet, just to cue people in that maybe are hearing about this series and we're intriguing them into finding it. The other girl is Ziggy Trask, who is part of the Trask family, the Sentinel family, I guess is the best way to explain the Trasks. Responsible for different generations, and they do switch place at one point. Yes.
well, my fantasy was, given the spelling of Trask, that way back in the proverbial dawn of time, one section of the family crossed the Atlantic and settled in the States and changed their name to Stark.
I like that.
So
Yeah.
Starks and Trasks that's why everybody's so brilliant,
Yeah.
especially with robots. Um, I think the thing, I've actually, depending on which fantasy series I'm writing, a fantasy variant of the X-Men I'm writing, Ziggy is a deadly adversary of the X-Men, a potential friend of the X-Men. This is one where I decided to come down on the side of friendship. And part of me is, if I had another shot at doing another Kitty Wolverine, the a direction I'd be thinking of is, okay, this is what happens next with Ziggy and Pryde, and how does that relate? How do they relate? But in the sense that maybe Ziggy finds a way to hang with the good folks for a while, whereas Kitty finds herself, or of necessity, jumps into the dark side, and see where that leads.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is that being, I guess, almost mid-adolescent, realizing you're in a whole different level than everybody around you for a whole host of reasons. Both of them are just exploring life. I mean, they've just started. They're just discovering all the good parts and the bad parts. But I mean, yeah, you meet each other on one issue, and Ziggy's trying to kill Kitty, and then literally a half issue later, Kitty, once upon a time, if we'd met under different circumstances, we could be friends. And then 8 pages later, they are friends.
Yes.
This is what you call miniseries fast track.
Yes. Sometimes the expediency of the page count is unfortunately necessary.
The issue count.
Yeah. Right.
But again, one of the sad realities of series comic books, or maybe series anything, series TV shows, what have you, is that it's a very nice cover. It's very challenging for principals in those series to make friends, to have someone come into their life and, hey, I like you, you like me. What happens next? Well, the non-regular character goes away because of necessity. Perhaps there isn't room in the cast to fit somebody in. And in a group book, it gets much more challenging, because if I focus on Kitty, what happens to Nightcrawler? If I focus on Nightcrawler, what happens to Storm? If I focus on Storm, what happens to Wolverine? You end up of reader enthusiasm focusing in on Wolverine. In the same way, though, if Dave Cockrum had stayed on as artist of the book, we'd be focusing in more and more on Nightcrawler.
Sure.
So we might be telling the Wolverine Nightcrawler arcs of them becoming best friends, but we'd be doing it from Kurt's perspective rather than Logan's. How would that work? Where would that go? I don't know, but it would be fun for me anyway.
Right.
Whether the readers like it would be a whole different question. But that's both the joy and the frustration for writing a group book. Do they stay the same over a course of issues or years, or both? Or do things change? And if they change, what direction do they go?
Yeah, and obviously, especially in the era where this series is set and when the original one happened, you had this book. You also had the New Mutants, and they all live in the same house. And Kitty's friend was Ileana, even from when she was a little girl. So it's like you're also like having to drag in characters from other books and make it all work. And I think you writing both books made it easy. The interesting thing, I assume, for an editor would be when, just hypothetically, the editor of Avengers wasn't the editor of Captain America, was an Iron Man, and that's like, okay, we got to get everybody on the same page. Doesn't always work, probably.
Well, that's not the problem so much. That the challenge here is that when you have a different writer writing, New Mutants, let's say, as opposed to X-Men, they might make creative decisions that the original writer wouldn't make. And how does that all work out? How does that fit? The challenge with a book like Wolverine Kitty is, in real reader terms, everybody knows how this is going to end, because the next issue of X-Men is Kitty returning to the team from Japan, and it's like, wow, nice haircut.
Yeah.
Presuming, of course, we continue to remind the artist that, yes, she has really short hair.
Yes. Yeah, and that of course slots right into because reading the description of issue 5 of Kitty and Wolverine, it said you'll never look at Uncanny X-Men 192 the same way again. I was like, all right, sounds like an excuse to reread it. I hadn't read it in decades, and yes, there they show up, and it's interesting to read a snippet like that completely out of context of the previous issues and what's about to follow, because I remember reading it, but I mentioned I was a fairly young child the first time I read any of this stuff. So you're discovering all kinds of things, and sort of what you're talking about in terms of the the interpersonal relationships, characters that don't get a chance to know each other very well. So so we have Rogue and Kurt's tickling her and, being somewhat flirty, where none of their family lineage has been established at this point. So it's almost like in Star Wars A New Hope when Princess Leia kisses Luke, and now you look at it and you go, ew.
You don't go, ooh, you just go, okay.
Sure.
It's again, there's both a temptation and a frustration because one of the earlier miniseries was that I did for this arc of stories was Gambit and Kid Aurora, or Kid
Yeah.
Rowe. And the hypothesis then was, well, she's a little kid. She's like 11.
Yeah.
Her powers haven't even fully developed yet. She knows they're there, but they don't always work, especially not the way she wants them to, which of course that's the foundation of literally every adventure. The things you need always don't work the way you want them to when you need them most.
But fortunately for her, even at 11, she was already a good pickpocket.
Oh no, she would. But that comes from her time in Cairo.
Sure.
But that's fun, you see. I mean, she climbs the wall in the first issue, climbs the wall of the estate house, finds a way to sneak in, works it out, gets in, and Gambit's waiting for her with the safe he sent her in to loot already open and appropriately looted. And she, how did you do that? He said, oh, I picked his key like 2 days ago and made a copy. I just unlocked the door and walked in. And she's really, really pissed. And there's, a storm cloud and a lightning bolt surrounding them from a panel. But his counterpoint is, so what? I have to know what you can do and how well you can do it. And it doesn't really subtext. I don't really matter to me, honey, that you're having trauma along the way. You got to get over it. But again, from my perception, the timeline here is however long it takes Ro to grow her hair from a buzz cut to her traditional length, all the way down to the small of her back. Mutant hair may grow faster than normal hair. For those of us with hair to grow.
Right, yes.
Nothing personal.
No, that's true. Yeah, I sometimes feel like I have mutant hair, so yes.
But the idea is time will pass.
Yeah.
So for me, I could happily have a madcap time of my life writing an ongoing miniseries just within those two windows of when he rescues her and when they show up at the mansion, and we, after she gets her memory back, and we take the next step. That's the reality of fiction. It's like when I had the Fantastic Four back in '98. I could do anything because the time window is infinite. Because we're playing with that kind of reality all along. That's it. From a writer's perception, it's a lot of fun. From the audience's perception, and probably the editor's perception, it's a pain in the neck because I'm telling readers who've been reading the book for decades, hi, these are stories you missed along the way. And you could love them or not, but they're there. If I do them right, you'll love them. If not, that's a whole different discussion. But meanwhile, the extant readers who are reading it now want to find out what happens next. They don't really care about what happened back in the day, because back in the day is before they were born. And it's sort of like if you were feeling incredibly foolishly creative and wanted to do West Wing, the prequel, and you went back and if you wondered why, um, you know, President Martin Sheen.
Yeah, I believe Jed Bartlett was a governor before he was president. I haven't
Well, he
seen
was
it.
also he was a Nobel-winning
Right, of course.
teacher. You know, well, do we really want to see that? Would it work? Well,
I
it's
could.
well. There
Yeah.
was, I mean, the plus side.
What about an Indiana Jones movie where he just teaches class? Because he's always running out of class to go on an adventure, but probably was a very interesting lecturer.
Or he's teaching class, and one of the students either gets mixed up in an adventure, or goes off on like what's her face from the last film, who was whose daughter? Was that?
Yeah,
He was. Yeah. Forgive my brain.
No, same with me.
There, you can play in any direction. It's like the famous sort of gotcha moment when Harrison Ford walks into the room, the makeup room of the actor who's playing young Han Solo,
right,
back in the prequel. There are all sorts of cool ways you can play it. The current, I reveal my fanboy tendencies, NCIS Origin series, where you find out this is oh, for God's sakes.
So I'm not familiar with the origins, but is it preceding the main?
Oh yeah, no.
NCIS?
This is back when he first.
It's Mark Harmon. Is it Mark Harmon's character?
Character first joins.
Yeah.
What was then NIS?
Oh, I see.
The Naval Investigative Service. This is back in the mid-late 90s. So it's in a way 20 years before, or 15 years before the episodes that we start watching with him saving the president's life in the first series. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But and I think next week they're doing a crossover, which is going to be interesting.
That is interesting.
But yeah. The reality in comics, as opposed to reality, let us say, is every year Mark Harmon's going to get a year older.
Sure.
Harrison Ford's going to get a year older. It's not going to be as easy to do the stunts in the last Indiana Jones movie as it was to do them in the first Indiana Jones movie, because he's 25 years older. The same with the last Bond film of
well, the last Roger Moore, I think, was
one. Well, yeah,
that was the one that was A View to a Kill. Like, he wasn't even going to make that one because he knew he was too old.
Well, he was 55.
He did one more, yeah. But you're talking probably more about Daniel Craig.
Totally about Daniel Craig.
Yeah, because he's not that old, but he'd done it for a while. And sort of what you're talking about Harrison Ford, he injured himself on the when he came back for Star Wars, and he hurt himself on Indiana Jones. These injuries probably happen all the time. However, when you're in your 70s, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we have to stop down production for like 6 weeks. Yeah.
Or utilize stand-in a lot more.
Sure. Definitely.
A lot more frequently. That's the reality of life. We don't have that in comics. I mean, that was that for me was why playing with the kids in New Mutants was so much fun, because they were kids. They were learning. They were screwing up. The whole point of Kitty at this stage of X-Men is, for all her skill, for all her courage, for all, it's when she and Nightcrawler are captured by the Shi'ar, and they're locked on the Shi'ar flagship, yada yada yada. What does she discover? She discovers, oh, look, we have they don't get clothes, they just beam themselves the clothes on top of them, and is demonstrating it to Kurt, and Kurt's going, then she turns into Darth Vader, and it's like, ah! And yes, those 4 panels were played deliberately by me and Dave as a giggle. But the next thing she does is come up with a transporter program. She writes a transporter program that transforms her into Dark Phoenix, and then she just phases onto the bridge of the ship, and of course everybody freaks out.
Yeah,
because Dark Phoenix, and then she just disappears, figuring she has struck fear into the hearts and minds of the adversaries, and we'll go on from there. It's a serious superhero gig moment, but it's played from the attitude of a 13-year-old. But then maybe a couple of issues later, when she's being chased through, when she's trying to bust everybody out of jail, she gets caught in or ambushed in an airlock by one of the Shi'ar. So she's in a knockdown, drag out fight to the end with this bug, horrible bug out of it, your basic nightmare. And she finds a way to beat it by opening the outer door and voiding the airlock. And yet she's heartbroken because one side of her brain is saying, good riddance. The other side is saying, I didn't even have a chance. I couldn't even try to rescue it. The two sides of her consciousness, in a way, are at war with one another. She wants to be the classic hero, which she will fight. There we go. Adversaries to the end, but we will not kill them because that's wrong. And the problem over the next couple of issues, including this miniseries, is her discovering the reality discovering Wolverine's reality.
Yeah.
That there are lines that, you have to take down adversaries like this the old-fashioned way, as in permanently. And that's, for all we know, that was something for him when he learned it in the beginning, at whatever age that was, might have been equally hard. But we're seeing it with her for the first time, and seeing it hopefully from the perspective of a barely adolescent young girl who never, as she says in the miniseries, no one ever told me I'd go out and have to kill people.
Yeah.
And and her realization that she can do that. And that's a punch to the gut that she never anticipated, and she doesn't want to play that game anymore. And again, this is a Logan moment. He comes out and says, well, you've got to do, and the one person she never anticipates facing in this colloquy, who's taking Logan's side, is her father.
Yeah. And
this is where she learns things about him that she never suspected, the life he used to live. When he and Charlie, they flew rescue, combat rescue. They climbed into a helo and went out and brought people back alive. And Charlie found a way to do it that didn't involve anybody dying, or at least them, anybody needing to be killed, because Charlie telepathically, got them to shoot in the wrong direction. But in the scenes when you see Carmen shooting, he's not playing by those rules. He's playing by the traditional rules. I got to save my Rio, my medic, and the guys we're rescuing. End of statement.
Right. And obviously Carmen Pryde is not a character that we spend a lot of time with typically. So he
No.
shows up in this, and even Kitty is like, Dad, you're fighting and you're good. She's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're actually really good at it. So it's not the way she's ever really thought of her father. The character kind of, retires in the background, but this following the previous miniseries, obviously, logically, they're all together in Japan already.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's because of the first miniseries.
Sure.
But what I would have tried to expand on if I'd had an opportunity, if I ever get an opportunity to do a third series, is why Carmen. He came home, he got married, they tried to live happily ever after. Lovely cover.
That's Amanda Connor is the artist on that one.
Yep. But of course, the giggle I would have done is have a couple or three arrows, much like the one on her leg, and they're bleeding too.
That's true. Yeah.
Just to show that, doesn't always go the way you want. But the point is that the reason she never saw it, Kitty never saw this aspect of her father, is because he buried it. He buried it so deeply that he never wanted to see it again because the memories were too harsh. And maybe he did it with a little help from Charlie, but he did it for a reason. He didn't want to go back with all of that deep down inside. And maybe that was cowardly. Maybe that wasn't. That's a whole different discussion. Maybe that's part of the subtext of the next issue, of the next arc. If I can do it. But the point here is that, especially with an arc like this, it's not about staging cool fights. It's about writing hopefully a really good story. Not about punching and hitting, but you have these core characters. You have Logan, you have Kitty, you have Ziggy, who are in conflict and who come hopefully face to face with that conflict and into a resolution that allows them to resolve that conflict. I mean, the original idea of the story, that's where a sixth issue could have been useful, is that Mariko, Logan's true love, isn't sure she wants this aspect of the clan. Even she's creeped out. This is pushing things way farther than she wanted to go, ever dreamed of going. But she has to do it not simply out of honor, but out of obligation to the people who are in her clan. It's all wrapped up. I mean, in a way, it's connected to an earlier Wolverine series I did last year, where Sabretooth apparently is out to kill her. If Wolverine's dead, he'll kill the next best thing, the woman who loves him and who he loved. So he's going to the rescue. But there to protect at the ancestral castle, to protect her, are waiting are Kitty and Yukio. So it could have been a knockdown, drag-out bear fight, except he got there first. And he killed Sabretooth. It's dealing... I mean, people, ask me about, are there any DC characters that I like? And I would say, yeah. It's Clark Kent and what's his face? Batman's alter ego.
Oh,
Bruce
Wayne.
Bruce
Wayne.
Wayne.
Too many Bruces in comic books, Chris.
Because Batman is Batman. Superman is Superman. But with the thing I wanted to play with Clark is that he's really good. He can type a story faster than anybody can imagine, especially on a manual typewriter. But Lois is better.
Yeah.
It's like he can write a really, really good story, interviewing yada yada. You could go all down through all the requirements, but Lois will find that one thing, that one aspect of it, that will make it so irresistible that she'll win yet another Pulitzer. He can save the world. She can explain that in ways that people will understand. It's like Batman can stop infinite numbers of criminal activity, but can he go out on a date?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because when we talk about Bruce Wayne on screen, I have what is not intentionally a hot take or a controversial opinion. I always say that for me, the best Bruce Wayne, not saying Batman, I thought Val Kilmer was the perfect Bruce Wayne, because you look at him and like, yes, this is the millionaire playboy who's got all the darkness inside, but he puts on the show better. Obviously the Christian Bale movies are phenomenal, but I just remember and rewatching it within the last few years, I'm like, yeah, he's the guy that I think of, and to that end, I'm going to assume that you saw the most recent Superman film, the James Gunn one. And I'm wondering what you think about the Clark Lois dynamic. The guy in the tights and the cape, that's a different conversation. But I'm sort of interested because as you ruminate on that, when I took my wife to see Man of Steel, the Zack Snyder one, she wasn't blown away by it.
You mean his
so the Zack Snyder 2012, 2013, that one,
the 4-hour one.
Yeah, eventually, yeah. She just felt like there was something missing, and then we watched the Richard Donner one, and she's like, "Oh yeah, they don't have Clark right. Zack Snyder never got Clark right. Clark is such an important part. Christopher Reeve is a tremendous Superman. He's arguably an even better Clark." So that's a little bit of my personal backstory watching the character on screen. How did you think James Gunn handled it in this year's film?
Well, I think going back to the beginning, there's that moment in Lois's apartment where she's getting ready and he just starts standing up. And his voice drops half an octave. He's like, "Lois? Yeah, Clark? There's something I need to tell you." And she's just battling on. And the moment before she steps out into view, he backs out. He backs off. There's a reason, I think, but that he just can't do it.
Yeah.
And so he collapses down. And it's just, all he does is stand up and fall down. And I had that, for me, this is why Marv Wolfman wants to hit me on the head a lot. When they were doing, was it Crisis? Where all the omniverses get smashed together.
Yes, where they tried to tidy up their alternate universes.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Yeah. So in the cover of Superman holding dead Supergirl, quite lovely. Yes. And but my instant reaction was, I looked at it and said, "No, you've missed the point." What's the point? It's Supergirl holding dead Superman. And they'll be, "Oh, come on. That, it's like, what, are you going to tell us this is like killing Jean?" And what I was thinking was, he's dead. And they have to find a way to win without it. And they do. They get to the end. But at the end of the series, they're all all the heroes are there, and they go, "Oh my God, we won, good for us," but Superman is no more.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's like, again, all of us reading it, well, yeah, that'll never, that won't hold, because they've got to bring Superman back.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're not really going to kill Jean Grey. She's going to come back. Well, no, we were going to kill her. We did
Yeah.
kill her.
If it was up to you, she was going to stay dead, which I
Right.
know you and I have spoken about.
That's why
Yeah.
Rachel's there.
Yeah.
She's the new Phoenix. She's the new quote unquote Jean Grey. Um, but, and one last tangent, when my counter pitch, when they to Shooter, when the word came out of X Factor, was you can't have Scott walk out on his wife and newborn child. That's not a hero's act. That's wrong. So bring him back. Jean's dead. Start the X Factor without Jean being dead. And if you want to bring her back, wait a year and bring her back from another dimension. Except she's 16. She's the age of Jean Grey when the X-Men started. And she's still hopelessly in love with Scott. But Scott's in love with Madeline, who's about to have their second baby. He's 10 years older than she is. It's like the romance, the passion that was her, in a way, the part of the center of her being, for him is now a little creepy. He can't. Times have changed. I've changed. You've changed. Let's, that would be the way to play it, and then see where you can go from there. But the thought with Crisis was, so everyone's sitting there and they're all heartbroken, and you're looking at and then this figure at the back of the crowd starts walking forward, and as he walks forward, he straightens his back, and he stands 6'5", 6'7" tall, and it's like, what? And he does this as he steps into view. He reaches up and does this, rushes his hands through his hair, and all the white flashes away. And he looks around at everybody else, and they're staring at him, and he's, what? You don't get it? I'm Superman. I don't get old. But my Lois got old, and Jimmy got old, and Perry got old, and the world got older, and I couldn't bear it. So I got old with him. And when Lois died, I couldn't, there was no point in getting young again. I just kept going.
Yeah.
But you're a different world. This is a different reality. You need Superman. Here I am. And then, of course, the first ad that came out after that would be, in the beginning, he leapt tall buildings at a single bound. He was faster than a speeding bullet, yada, yada, yada. He was the one, the only, the original Superman, created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, coming this fall from DC Comics, art and story by John Byrne. And I said, what I said to myself was, fuck, if they did that, I'd buy it. I'd take out a subscription just to see what John could do with that trope. Because at that point, everything would be up in the air. There's no way he could turn to Lois. His Lois died. Her Clark died. She wouldn't want anything to do with him, and vice versa. Maybe there's no way he could go to the Daily Planet, because it would put him and Lois in each other's face. So maybe that's where he goes to become a TV anchor. You push the lives apart and see where it leads. Maybe he doesn't want to fall in love with anybody. Then you surprise him. Would Lana come back into his life? Who knows? You find a way to present the character and tell the stories from a perspective that's totally unseen, and figure out and see where that leads. For me, it would have been really cool if I could have gotten away with it to do a mini series where Kitty and Ziggy were in each other's bodies. And what do you do after 2 or 3 or 4 issues when they like it? Kitty likes suddenly being normal, and of course being a hottie blonde. That's a new experience. Brunettes, yeah, but blondes. Maybe she's having more fun. Maybe she likes being a 15-year-old or 16-year-old going to the University of Chicago and getting involved with older guys. I mean, it's not their fault they're older. Maybe Ziggy, the team is cool. Nightcrawler is cool. Saving the world is cool. Can she go back? Does she want to go back? Will she be able to cope with the world as a normal person? It's, I mean, you could, for copyright reasons, whatever, she could, that may be what has to happen at the end, but the questions one asks along the way, what if maybe they both end up at the University of Chicago or whatever. It's, you try to find every question and find every answer. Maybe the answer is you come up with a situation where they have to go back to their original realities simply for a greater good. But that's all. You throw a question up, you answer the question. Where do you go from here?
Well, again, what you were saying, sort of being limited by the number of issues and only so much room to tell these stories. Within the stories that you were able to tell, Ziggy has this, you have this impression of mutants being the evil of the world, but then also the realization, well, this is actually really cool that I can phase through things, and not knowing what to think, but it does have to all get resolved fairly quickly. It's almost like the old television problem. It's like, look, as long as you wrap it up in 44 minutes, it's fine.
Oh no, that's quite true. Except that there are, as with NCIS Origins, you can create a situation in one episode, resolve it at the end of the episode, but then there is a deeper and more impactful resolution that doesn't occur until 2 or 3 episodes later. There's always a flexible way to get around the reality. The point is trying to figure it out and then trying to make it work. The difference, for better or worse, is that when one works in a employment reality where the toys are owned and controlled by a higher authority, that becomes more challenging. The Fantastic Four will always be the Fantastic Four. Spider-Man will always be Spider-Man, because that's the reality. That's you've got to have Spider-Man be effectively Peter Parker, because that's what the movie character is going to be.
Yeah.
The interesting reality presented by the X canon is that they can be made somewhat more fluid than the traditional Stan Lee, Jack Kirby characters. That could, some people might not be comfortable with that reality, but that's
to that end, and something you're saying about Superman was making me think about Logan, when you use that character in stories you're telling now, set in earlier time frames, there's a lot of backstory to that character that you didn't have a hand in, So when
Yes,
you're writing it, is it, I'm keeping in mind the way that I understood this character in this story that's set in 1985, or do you have to take into consideration, the fact that his claws were bone underneath, the fact that I guess, depending on which timeline you choose, he served in the Civil War, he's that old and he ages that slow, or do you just go, well, this is what was in my head back then, and I'll just stick with that. Otherwise, you could go crazy trying to keep it all in mind.
that's what editors are for.
That's fair.
Who can say, yeah, I see where you're going with this, Chris, but we can't really invalidate stuff that happened afterwards, no matter how much you want to.
Okay.
It's you're working for someone else, and that means you have to play by like it or not, play by their grown-up rules. I think you can argue that mine's the better story.
Sure.
It's my conception of Logan is way, 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 way more fundamentally different than both the Hudnall character, the James Hudnall Logan, and the Hugh Jackman Logan.
Sure.
The history of it. But that's my origin, which is a story I can tell for everybody's amusement at conventions, but there's no way at all that it will show up, I suspect, in on screen, simply because it makes life too complicated for the audience. I can sit there for 30 seconds and enjoy the scenes from Wolverine Logan.
Deadpool Wolverine. Yeah.
I knew that was in there somewhere. Where Logan's going, where Deadpool's going from reality to reality looking for his perfect Logan, and I can say, oh, look, that's a shot of one of my series. That's a shot. Yeah. Oh, look, there he is, stapled to the cross. There he is, running a bar in a saloon in Madripoor.
And they also had a height accurate Logan at one point, because he's supposed to be much smaller. And I remember years ago you told me that what you were thinking, when the notion of putting an X-Men movie together in the late 80s.
Oh yeah,
you thought that Bob Hoskins, which
yeah.
Just physically, obviously he's not built like Hugh Jackman, but in terms of the physicality, you're like, yeah, that's very consistent with the way he was in.
Yeah, but what you do with Bob Hoskins is that you play with it, martial arts being where the combat skill comes from. He doesn't let anybody touch him. Instead, he just beats the living daylights out of him. And if things get really worse, really serious, that's when the claws come out. And that's, as Aurora once lectured him about in the X-Men, those claws are so lethal, they should only come out when you're actually serious. As for everything else, your bones are forged, laced in adamantium. Somebody hits you, they're going to break their own hand.
Yeah.
More than yours. There are always ways around it. Reed Richards, the things he can do with his elastic body, I don't care what the Scarlet Witch thinks. There are ways around it. Not even, he's a genius. He can figure this out.
Yeah.
Black Bolt, not so much, but that's a whole different thing. it's asking yourself as a writer, what's happening in this scene? What do you want to, where do you want things to go? Obviously, in the Doctor Strange Scarlet Witch story, where Reed gets,
yes, the multiverse of madness. Yes.
okay,
It has to look good on a poster, Chris.
I didn't, it's, again, you find a way in a comic, you need it to work because he's got to come back next issue. So you find a way out. In a movie situation like that, maybe not so much because you're going in a different direction. It'll be interesting to see how things will work in the forthcoming Avengers films now that words come out online. I think that this is going to be Patrick Stewart's last acting performance. Until, of course, Ian McKellen says, "You want to go do another thing on stage?" Oh, yeah. Yes.
Or the right Picard script lands on his desk. There's always one more,
Well, there is always one more. That's, I mean, as Harrison Ford says, I'll, you think I do this for fun?
Well, I mean, what I love is the interview where he's half joking. He's like, that's what the money's for.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's not a joke.
I know.
I mean, it's someone once asked me, how did I start? And I said, well, I started out university with going for a degree in political theory. I was in international relations. It didn't go in that direction for me, but interestingly enough, my son seemed to be going in a much more interesting version of that. And I became an actor. And they said, wow, what was that like? And I said, well, I was really good. And I loved it. Surprised the hell out of me too. It didn't work. Why not? Well, I started writing. And, I woke up like 7 years after I started writing the X-Men and thinking, I guess I'm not an actor anymore. But the real question was, well, how do you feel about acting? I mean, about writing. And I said, well, how do you feel about breathing? And they didn't understand. And I said, I write the same way I breathe, the reason I breathe, which is this is what I have to do to survive. It's just, that's me. Whatever. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why it came from, but I've got it. And I'm going to do it because this is, I breathe, I take a breath to survive, and I keep writing stories to survive. That's, that's reality.
And just to interject in that, when you first started working in Marvel, sort of more on the editorial side, I know that your first credit was a plot assist on a Daredevil, but you didn't actually sit down and write it. Was that just more, okay, I'm acting, I'm going to work at Marvel in this way, and then the writing just sort of crept up, sort of while you were
I was always writing. I made my first writing sale when I was still in university, but that was prose. And I figured, prose is fine. I'll go write, I can do two things at once.
Sure.
Theoretically. What Marvel back then was a way to earn money so I could afford to go out and do summer stock, so I could afford to get more credits, so I could afford to start auditioning seriously off Broadway and, get my SAG card and do more gigs. And, just work my way up the ladder. What I didn't anticipate was that I would enjoy it so much, and bluntly, that the X-Men would come along. Well, once the X-Men came along, everything changed.
Right. But I mean, of course, obviously they have, the X-Men book had become a collection of reprints for a few years. Giant Size X-Men. This is mostly for the audience. Giant Size X-Men comes along. Len Wein does that, but he doesn't want to do the monthly book. But I guess there's still not that.
The fact is that when X-Men was created, the new X-Men, Len was editor-in-chief.
I see.
And then shortly after, when we were in mid-production on Giant Size 2, situation changed. He left that post, but his exit, he took 4 monthly titles as his, that was his exit, his retirement in a way. But he just started working on X-Men, and Marvel at that point had decided a Giant Size wasn't going to work, so they made it a bi-monthly title. But he couldn't handle the work pressure of 4 monthlies and a bi-monthly, and that was the Expendable book. So with me, it was being in the right place at the right time, and I loved the book. I love the characters. I love the idea of working with Dave Cockrum. So I tackled him and said, I want the book. And well, since my desk was right outside his office, and just to get rid of me, he just said, fine, do it.
Go ahead and take this.
And
you referenced the fact that it was bi-monthly, and it's for a few years. So there was, whoever the other powers that be were they still not that dedicated to like a new X-Men? Did they still
No. We would have gone, if in any other reality, we probably would have gone monthly with 101.
Oh, I see.
I mean, the response to just in those like 6 issues leading up to that was, holy cow, what the heck have we got going here?
Yeah.
The challenge, sadly, was that Dave, at that point, Dave Cockrum could not do a monthly title. It creatively, he needed more time, just because he put so much effort and so much focus into each issue. He wasn't fast enough. And I mean, we had 2 fill-ins in the first, dozen issues, which that's not a good place to go.
And it is worth pointing out that this was a very ad-heavy time for Marvel. So there was 17 pages of content in those bi-monthly issues, and I think Dave Cockrum was obviously a tremendous artist, but it's I guess was it just perfectionist? Was that why it took him so long, or what do you feel that that the issue was for Dave?
I don't know, because he was doing it. It was manageable on the Legion of Superheroes.
I see.
It was that it was. And of course we had John Byrne like looming over the castle wall.
Right. Were you working? You were working with him on Iron Fist already?
Yes.
Or okay, yeah. And
well, actually, the 2 series, Star-Lord, the giant-sized Star-Lord was sort of how we wanted to see how John and Terry worked together as a team, and then Iron Fist 15 was, can John draw the X-Men? I mean, can he actually physically?
Right.
Can he handle the characters visually? And we got yeses to both. So the thing was, he took over unexpectedly with 107. The first half of the 108, the conclusion of the Shi'ar, the conclusion of the Star of the Shi'ar arc, the original one, where Phoenix.
Yeah, just regular recipe Phoenix at that point.
Right. Yes. And we had to fill in to buy him time to catch up. And then once he took over, we were bi-monthly, I think, for another few months while he built out, because he could do 2 issues a month. That was the point.
Sure.
Dave couldn't. Dave could do them one a month, knocking wood. So the minute he caught up, or we got some issues in the drawer that gave us a cushion, we went monthly and didn't look back. Until, of course, 10 years later, when they decided to go bi-weekly in the
I
summer.
Yes, I remember that because
Me
that
too.
was that was that meant I had to buy an extra Uncanny X-Men, an extra Amazing Spider-Man. I think they might have done that with the Wolverine solo book too. I guess the idea was kids like me had summer jobs, so go ahead and spend twice as much every month.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know that some of those runs, obviously, like the Genosha story in Uncanny, those were every 2 weeks, and Rick
Mhm.
Leonardi, who I think is tremendous, would step in here and there, and
Well,
you
no,
know,
he did the other half
right.
of the run. I mean, of the Genosha one. But that was it. I mean, I mean, I had no problem with the bi-weekly. Just my attitude was, as long as you buy the X-Men first, I don't care.
Right, exactly.
But that's it.
If you leave that Amazing Spider-Man on the rack and you bought the X-Men, then mission accomplished.
Yeah. I mean, there was only one X-Men book. How many Spider-Mans did you have that?
Well, at that point, I think there were four if you count Marvel Tales. So yes.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
we can afford it. No, I mean, look, we were a commercial enterprise, like it or not. But it's, again, it's finding a way all across the board to tell stories in terms of that the readers will understand. And that's why, going back to the Wolverine Kitty, the thing that is important to her, I mean, what's important to Logan is teaching her how to use her new abilities so that nobody who isn't supposed to will get hurt. All Kitty wants to do, she's hanging out, attending class with his and Mariko's stepdaughter. She's hanging out with school kids for the first time in God knows how many issues since she became part of the X-Men. That's all she wants. She wants a normal life. Why is that such a hard thing? And Logan's fine. You've done your exercises for the day. Go hang out with the kids. Have a nice time. And of course, in the middle of it, they get attacked by villains, supervillains. But again, working through that first issue, it's trying to present what's happening in ways that will tell you what the heroes can do, but also present it in ways that are fun. Where they kind of make fools of the villains, or Kitty does, and the art was the presentation of that sequence. I thought was worked brilliantly because it looked like fun. That occasionally there would be moments where, in the classic sense, you slip on banana peels, but they recover. They do. It wasn't serious. And then with each further issue, it gets a little more serious, and little weird mysteries like, what's this statuette of me and Kitty and Mariko? Oh, that's been in our family for, I don't know, 1,000 years. Yeah, well, what am I and Shadowcat doing 1,000 years ago, and you doing in a statue that's 1,000 years old? Oh, that's an interesting one. I never thought of that. I've always,
Yeah.
It's mysteries. And again, with each, I mean, my idea was, you do a mini series, it's one gigantic story. And for me, it was like, why not 5 issues, 4 stories, see what happens?
Yeah.
So, I mean, each story sort of leads into the one after it, but it's giving, I hope, the game is to give the readers value for the for the $25 they'll spend on the whole series. And
Yeah.
that needs to be what it's all about. And the joke I found, which is what kind of got compressed into the last page, is that along the way, Pryde finds her, well, what is for me her iconic superhero outfit, which is the blue suit that she's wearing in the back of the cover here. Because it's the first outfit I've seen for her that wasn't derivative of the X-Men, but made her look cool. Especially if she pulled up the hood and put the mask over her, hung the mask off her nose, so the only thing you see are her eyes. And so that's why she has the moment where she leaves it hung off of a statue in the graveyard, metaphor, because this isn't something she feels she can wear as a member of the team. It's not a team outfit. This is a solo outfit. So she'll, if she comes back to Japan and has another adventure, this is what she'll look like. And I thought, that's cool. And she has a couple of swiped claws that were derived from Logan's bone claws, and those are her knives, because a cat has knives or claws.
And there is sort of the evolution into the shadow cat costume, which is easier to sort of delineate as that, which is what she kind of wore for the longest time. And, now it's basically, I guess, a New Mutants style. But I think that look worked. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that I asked you about, and there's so many threads I want to pull on for things we've talked about, but I want to make sure that I ask you about this specifically because about a month ago, I moderated a panel at Los Angeles Comic-Con, which is much smaller than the big one in San Diego, but we have fun there. And it was on the 40th anniversary of Secret Wars, the big 12-issue miniseries. And at the end of that series, there's a moment where Charlie has a quote unquote new costume. And our visual audience sees a representation of it here by Brandon Peterson and Joseph Rubinstein. It's yellow with a big X on it. And in rereading Secret Wars, I'm like, yeah, I kind of remember that for a minute. When sometimes, events from other stories are like, okay, Charlie has this suit now. I don't remember it sticking around very long. This seems like maybe it wasn't really a good look for him. I made a note while I was on the stage. I'm like, next time I talk to Chris, I want to ask him if he has any recollection of this suit at all.
I don't think we ever used it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the Secret Wars suit, and we wanted as little to do with Secret Wars as possible, aside from the fact that Colossus used a cheap excuse in Secret Wars to break up with Kitty, which had a whole lot of consequences.
Yeah, and rereading that for the first time in forever, she was actually the Human Torch's girlfriend, and he didn't care about her, and he falls in love with her, and then
wait, who was the Human Torch's girlfriend?
Zaji, the alien woman.
Oh, right, Zaji.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you meant Kitty. And I was
No. Johnny Storm was a dog, but not to that extent. So yeah, so the alien woman, and he just didn't care about her, and so Peter just falls more and more in love with her during this 12-issue miniseries, and that and I guess that was I don't know, that was Shooter's decision to break up him and Kitty, or was it something you wanted to do anyway? And it seemed like this.
No, I mean, it was just, I think it was me taking what Jim did with Peter and using it to smash Kitty's life.
Yeah.
I mean, she was 13. What the, how many, it's like, depending on which movie you're watching or TV series, one doesn't always come back. Well, one might come back 30 years later to the love you had when you were a kid, but it's not a necessity. And in comics, my my philosophy is always in comics has always been, you should never get married. The only reality for me is there's only one couple in the Marvel universe who should get married, and that's Reed and Sue.
Sure.
Just to demonstrate, yes, it can be done, but nobody else should do it. Why? Because it takes all the fun out of the comics. I mean,
Well,
if I'm 15, do I really want to read a comic about grown-ups married?
Well, okay, so Peter and Mary Jane did get married when I was about 15, and I was probably excited about that because it was very hard to find the issue because it was an annual, and I had to drive around just to try to find it anywhere because when you subscribe to Amazing Spider-Man, you don't get the annuals. So I found that out the
Oh,
hard
that's not fair. No, I
way.
mean, look, my wife and I, and sitting next to Walton Weesey, we were at Shea Stadium watching Stan perform
Sure.
the marriage. The disadvantage is that once you're married, you're married.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the extent Peter had to go through to get a divorce,
I believe Mephisto had to get involved,
and no one's touched that since. I
and
mean, I would think if I found myself in I don't know, debt to Daniel Webster's Devil,
yeah.
that would be worth a miniseries in and of itself. But that's basically the problem, is that once you have two choices. Either you take the marriage to its next level, which is what I did with Scott and Madeline, and you actually deal with it as a marriage and prove that, okay, Hank, Reed and Sue aren't the only exceptions to the rule, which would be fun. But that means the character's relationship to other characters and to the series, especially if it's a group series that he or she is involved with, changes fundamentally. I mean, the problem with T'Challa and Aurora is Aurora has a much, much, much bigger fan base than T'Challa.
Sure.
Yet he gets top billing because it's his book. And B, like it or not, if one is if a king rules the country and you're married to the king, you have one primary job: to make baby kings.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're a world-renowned, universe-saving superhero in your own right. This is what you have to do. That's part of the marriage contract, metaphorically speaking. And once Aurora gives birth, is she going to walk out on the kid every time the X-Men have an emergency and go halfway around the world to save the world? How do the people of Wakanda feel about that? There's a whole lot of ramifications to being a royal in a situation like this than being Spidey's wife or
Right.
Spidey.
Right. Yeah. It's obviously Reed and Sue. It makes perfect sense. And, within the last decade, I know that they teased that they were going to put Kitty and Peter together, and then they ultimately didn't do that. And that was
I was there.
You wrote sort of a side, like 10-page story. I think you might have written like oh, sorry about that. But it was like I don't know. It was like the bachelorette party or something. I think.
No. With mine, it was her. The story was. It's the night before, or a couple of nights before, and she's going through all of her jitters.
Yeah.
In Chicago, and confessing little things like, my nightmare is that I'm still in Joss Whedon's stupid Bullet.
Oh.
And this is all a dream.
Yeah.
And then at the end, because I had no idea she was going to like phase through him and run away.
Yeah.
The ghosts of her father and her true love, who died in World War II, and Logan, I think, pop up around her and give their blessing. Yada yada yada.
Yeah. The True Love in World War II, I believe that series, was it Kitty and Phoenix, or Kitty and Rachel best friends?
No, it's
yeah, which is, one of those ones that
true friends, not best
true
friends.
Yes, which I thought was great. Speaking of Rick Leonardi, by the way, that's
I
love that series. Yeah,
me too.
Yeah,
no, I mean it's all sorts of things. There's the what if I'd love to have done, which is, okay, she finds herself stuck in 1938. What does she do? Well, first thing she does is stop World War II the old-fashioned way.
Right.
Just killing everybody in the Nazi hierarchy, because she's a ninja. She can do this stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Or not.
The old time travel question: do you go back and kill Hitler? Well, sure, but you can't stop there. It's
no. You have to go all the way down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Kitty knows exactly who to do it. But the flip side is, but you'll change your world forever. And Kitty's attitude is, I don't care.
Yeah.
I've just saved 12 million people. All the people killed in World War II, in all the innocent bystanders killed in Europe. I've stopped the Shoah. I've possibly stopped all the Middle Eastern wars for the next 70 years, because if there's no Israel, we'll find another solution. You could run down the list.
Yeah.
And Franklin Roosevelt could live longer. Who knows? Because again, the next question would be, well, if does that mean Ho Chi Minh gets to throw the French out the old-fashioned way? It's just, and this is where, forgive me, the political theorist side of my head comes into play, because when I was writing a paper back in the 60s, late 60s, if at the end of World War II, if the French hadn't been allowed to come back to Indochina, if Ho Chi Minh had simply been given, he beat the Japanese, he gets the country. But the Vietnamese hate the Chinese. Chinese hate the Vietnamese. It would have been fine geopolitically from America's point of view, because it's, okay, they're Russian communists, but Ho Chi Minh's favorite political documents from when he was a student in the United States were the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. So that means it's not necessarily an even playing field in that respect. We could become friends. Holy cow, we could become friends in 1950. And that puts, takes 68,000 names off a wall and puts them back into circulation.
Sure.
I mean, again, this is, you take a step and another step and another step. And, the argument, but Kitty, what you're talking about is you'll end up becoming the de facto ruler of the world just by poking. It'll only work until I run out of historical ways, at moments where history needs a nudge. And I have no problem with that, because I know what happens next in my world. And if I can head it off here, but you may make things worse. Well, That'll give us all something better to do.
But
It's
as it relates to World War II, hard to imagine it being worse. So go ahead and give it a try. I'm talking.
Well, no, I mean, worse could be that a Nazi-backed political party could win here in the States.
That's fair. Yeah.
Fascists could become a dominant or an influential political force. Oh, wait, you mean like now? The thing about playing with history and reality. I mean, the other fantasy story I had was that, and I actually did this for DC. December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor. December 8th, Superman sinks the entire Japanese Navy. December 9th, Japan surrenders. They're not stupid.
Yeah.
Germany never declares war on the United States. December 11th. Douglas MacArthur and Superman spend the next 20 plus years basically stabilizing East Asia, getting Japan's 1 million men out of China, building a viable democratic Chinese political reality, bring democracy to Japan. They're not paying attention to anything else. This is the primary focus. What do they not notice in Europe? Oh, the Shoah. By the time Superman learns what the Germans did, all the death camps have been buried, deconstructed, So he flies over and he digs up evidence of Auschwitz. But by the time he digs it all up, he's surrounded by a small army of German troops. And, he tells the general, "You really want to fight?" And the general says, "What will that change? None of these men around me were alive when this happened. Only we old commanders. What are you going to prove? What are you going to do? It won't bring back the dead. You'll just add to it." And Superman knows he's right. Of course, the next thing that happens is a nuclear bomb goes off and destroys Metropolis. Oops.
Yeah.
And, Germany's out. Who did this? Not us. We are completely innocent.
Yeah.
But Superman keeps poking around in our political and international affairs. You can never imagine what might happen next. So, I mean, there are consequences, but the point is you start with, an alternate reality, and you go on from there. And that's what that arc was all about. Interestingly enough, it's the one Elseworlds mega story that's Superman Wonder Woman, where it's the turn of the century and Clark still looks like Clark and Lois looks like a 90-year-old reporter. No longer for the Metropolis Daily Planet. She's working for the New York Times. She happened to be out of the city when this happened. But you take the elements, you plug them all together, and you see if it works. And if it does work, and you can sell it to a publisher, knock wood, you pray somebody will read it. In this instance, not so much. But there you go.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was completely unaware of that the Superman story that you were talking about. But I did my due diligence to look it up, and I do believe it is this whom gods destroy.
Yep.
Yes, and I know that you did a few different stretches with the Man of Steel, a few times along the way, and you referenced writing the FF. In the 90s. So obviously people know you for your work with the X-Men. That's what you tend to do these days as well. But it must be fun to take a character like Superman that you really just known from afar for decades, and then
Well,
like, okay, let me see what I can do with him.
like I said, Superman's boring. Clark, that's fun.
Clark's,
Well,
that's true.
because
Clark is the best part.
when I was doing my series Sovereign 7 for
Yeah,
DC,
sure.
and the key with that was that Sovereign was our Paul Levitt's and my experiment was, could you come up with a creator-owned series and integrate it into the standard DC universe, so you could have work for hire characters, Superman, integrated with creator-owned characters like Sovereign 7, to try and avoid a repetition of what happened with Siegel and Schuster, etc. This way, to balance it out. Sadly, it started well, but then the recession of the mid '90s hit, and it just
It was it's to this day still the only monthly DC book set in the DC universe that I was a reader of, because I don't know, maybe I just didn't have enough allowance. I drew my line in the sand early on with Marvel, but when you started doing this, I was intrigued, and yeah, I mean, I think that the concept was good, and there was also sort of cameos that you were able to work around some of the trademarks.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
Darkseid shows up in the first issue,
yeah,
and but the idea was the lead character, the young lady in the front. There comes a point where she just can't handle being with leading the team and making mistakes anymore, so she goes off and comes down to New York, and sort of for a bunch of issues becomes not quite a private eye, but something like that. Dave Cockrum and I did it. Like, it was 5 or 6 page backups.
oh,
So it was broken down. So we had like an 18 page Sovereign story and then the backup. And, I was just playing it as a normal kind of girl moving to this city for the first time, because the world she comes from is nothing like this. Everybody who lives in it is a figment of her mother's imagination, and she intrigues Clark because she reminds him of himself, the sole survivor of her race, coming from a world unimaginably far from Earth, and trying to build a new life for herself in this planet. He helps her find a little apartment, and then they walk around the Upper West Side dumpster diving for furniture and stuff. All elements of, stuff I did when I was a young nubbin. And, step by step by step. But it's a relationship of Clark, the reporter, and this kid. Who knows? I mean, she's a nice kid, but also a potential story.
yeah.
It's, again, and part of it was me remembering what it was like to move into the city when I was a kid, well, younger. And, coming to this country as an immigrant. What was that like? Could have been better, but that's welcome to the reality. The thing I always loved more about Marvel, and the thing I tried to put into the X-Men as much as I could, was that it related much more, the stories related much more to a world I recognized. DC, not so much. That's partly the era that the stuff was being written in, but it reflected the editorial policy. And, you know, it's like a great many DC heroes were men of wealth and power. So they didn't often have challenges faced by Peter Parker of how do I pay this month's rent, which I suspect for a lot of comic book writers and a lot of people can be a reality.
Yeah,
So
there were those real world concerns, and also just the simple fact that Marvel, for the most part, was in New York and not Metropolis, Gotham City, Center City. You know, it was a real place. You know, the West Coast Avengers move out to Los Angeles. You know, they're all, and the day to day. Obviously, Marvel had their millionaires, mostly Tony Stark, but you know, you had
pretty
guys who
much
grew up.
exclusively, yeah.
Yeah, you guys. You know, I mean, you know, Matt Murdock growing up in Hell's Kitchen, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and Peter Parker in Queens. Yeah, I think that, and obviously, you know, Scott Summers' upbringing. When he didn't realize he had a space pirate for a father.
You know, that in a way, the thing with his father was he got his wish. He made it to outer space. He made it to deep space. What did it cost him? The last vision he had of his sons was them falling from like 8,000 feet with their parachute on fire.
Yeah.
He saw his wife murdered by the alien despot who abducted him. He was, you know, from there you go on to Captain Blood, you know, Raphael Sabatini. He had nothing left, no reason to go back. You know, he'd just be alone, and more aware of being alone than he would have been as leader of the Starjammers. He was starting life over again. Then he discovered his kids were alive, and we proceed from there. By the same token, you could look at Carol Danvers. Suddenly she becomes binary, and so she's got everything she's ever wanted, her own superpowers. She gets to explore outer space. Woohoo! and she's making friends in the X-Men. What happens next? Charlie takes the kid who stripped her of everything, Rogue, and makes her part of the team. Because Charlie's looking at it from a therapeutic standpoint. The kid is damaged goods. I'm a healer. I've got to find a way to repair her, if at all possible. That is my obligation. That's what I'm here for. That's what the school is here for. Well, Carol's attitude is, no, what you need is the Walt Simonson cover.
Oh, so a different binary cover.
No, it's not. No, this is the one where the issue where she and Rogue.
Oh, you're talking about Rogue. Oh, yeah. I see. I was too slow on that one, Chris.
Sorry about that.
No. That's all right. I do know the one you're talking about. It's 171. Yeah, that's all right.
But and intellectually, Carol understands what he's doing and why he's doing it. But in her gut, it's like, I get maimed by her, and you, my friend, theoretically betray me without even a second thought. Up yours, dude.
Yes.
And the idea, the hope, the thought was to present it from both perspectives. You understand, she's a kid. She doesn't know what's happening. She's terrified. And part of that nightmare is that what she did to Carol. But the other part of it, in a way far worse, is that person that she absorbed is still inside her head and won't let her forget it. You know, and so every so often, for the needs of the circumstance or needs of the many, Carol takes over. And that Rogue finds there's not much she can do about it. So it's like she's got this really good apartment, and this ghost living inside her, and she can wake up one morning and the whole apartment can be redesigned according to the way Carol likes it, not the way Rogue likes it.
Yeah.
The music that Carol likes, not, it's, again, it's taking the characters and dealing with them, for want of a better phrase, like real people. Like you're writing, everyone says, what's your favorite issue? And I say 94 to 279, page 11.
Right.
It's one story.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's how you define it. You create people that the audience will bond with, and then you put them in an ongoing series of situations that will keep the audience coming back for more, but along the way having a heck of a lot of fun. And yes, each issue has a seduction. You bring in a character like Rogue that we know for truth did a horrible thing. Carol hit her hard enough to, the old honeymooners line, wham, boom, right to the moon, and Rogue is hit hard enough to almost bounce off the moon. And she thinks she's like really pissed, but
yeah,
for her, this is fun. Until she finds out who's hitting her. Why are you hitting me? I've never seen you before. I don't even know you. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Carol. Oops. That's theoretically, hopefully, if you do it right, the audience will see aspects of that in that moment, those characters, those people, that they'll recognize. That when you see Kitty and Ziggy having their little colloquy, I think it's in issue 3, might be 4, where they're dead. I mean, they've been pulled out of their bodies. Their bodies have been turning into many sentinel assassins, and they know they're dying because they're the parts that what's her face, whose name I forget, the boss doesn't need. So they're fading, and once they fade, they're done. So that and what's the point of figuring out how to fight her? We can't. We're dying. Well, you're dying. I'm going to fight, Kitty says, until I find a way to win. That's what I do. And if you had any brains, you'd help out. But it's ideally, if I'm doing it right, reading this sequence of events, you learn, you bond with the characters, you become more, you like them more, you want to see what happens next more. And then at the end, they do win with one slight boo-boo. They're in the wrong bodies and they can't get back, they can't get into the right ones. But that's what this is all supposed to be about. You find a way to get the audience involved with the characters. Then you mess it up. You have everybody sitting on the edge of their seat for the appropriate amount of pages. Then you have everybody win at the end. Yay. And then by page 3 of the next issue, things are worse.
Yeah. There was one thing that I wanted to reference when we were looking at Uncanny 171, and I'm sure that the covers are put together by somebody other than you, because I was reading, this has the "Welcome to the X-Men Rogue, hope you survive the experience," which is used many times, but I think this might be the first time it was used. Was 139, "Welcome to the X-Men Kitty Pryde, hope you survive the experience."
Well, she's the first new character since we started the series.
Right. Yeah. So that's why I thought that was her, and
Hmm.
the skull cap never really worked. That was not the best look for her, which is why she started redesigning the costumes, I
Well, it
think.
wasn't the best look for Jean either, but there
It's a
you
good,
go.
actually, that's a great point. Yeah. There's of course, a million things that I could still ask you, but when we started talking, it was the morning for you, and now it's already in the middle of the
Now it's the
afternoon.
morning for you.
Yeah, it's
Or
true. It'll
nighttime
be
for
the
me.
afternoon for me before you know it. Is there anything you're working on that you're allowed to tell us? Because I know a lot of times you're working on things that it's like, one day I'll be able to tell you. So then, can I say, are you working on something but just can't tell us?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
All right, that sounds like we need to keep our eyes peeled, and obviously, if people want to know, you're very active on the convention scenes. I don't quite see what. Oh, that's the book, the notes. Yes. So, if only I could have
Yeah,
zoomed in while that book was open, Chris.
I mean, I'm doing a signing, I think next week in Brooklyn or Queens. But yeah, the convention circuit's pretty calm for now. I'm picking up again in the spring.
Yeah. You'll
In
be at
Seattle.
one that I always go to in Ontario, California, the Comic-Con Revolution. You've been
Hmm.
announced for that. I've that's the one time I met you in person was there, and I'm going to. The last time you were there, I pitched a panel that I was going to moderate with you, and then they told me, yeah, somebody already pitched that panel. So I'm not going to say what my idea for a panel is for this year. I don't want anybody to take it.
Well,
But
what was your idea last time?
the idea last time, it was I guess John Romita Jr. was originally going to be there and then he wasn't, so it was like, it seemed simple. Maybe that was the problem. It was X-Men in the 80s. I wanted to specifically focus on the era where you collaborated with him on that, and then I think he ended up not being there and you did it more of a generic panel with somebody. But I think Mark Silvestri was there too. I think that's what
Mm.
I'm thinking, putting both of them and you talking about, because there's some people in between, but basically John Romita ends and Silvestri takes over full time. So that's an incredibly important run. When the book started coming out every 2 weeks for the summer was
Well,
that
that's
era.
why you
Yeah,
have Sylvester around. I mean, sorry, that's why you have Rick around.
yeah, of course.
But I mean, the thing is, the challenge is that solo character books are easy, are
Yeah,
fun. And in an interesting way, books like the Avengers can be fun too, because you don't have to worry about fundamental characterization because that takes place in the character's own books. But the interesting reality is if you watch an Avengers movie, you'll see Robert Downey Jr., you'll see um, uh, Chris Evans, you'll see all the Chris's.
Chris
Everybody's
Hemsworth,
the
Chris Pratt.
Hemsworth, there's
Yeah, all the
Evans.
Chris's. Yes.
No, Pratt's waiting for his own series, waiting for Stargate.
Supposedly they're doing that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what he
but the
said.
point is, everybody's there normally. Why? Because no actor likes running around in a CGI skin suit pretending to be inside a suit of armor. Because you can't really emote in a suit of armor. And how best can you do a scene of Iron Man talking to someone else with the mask closed, with the helmet closed? You miss a lot of, it's quick bursts because you're totally reliant on special effects. You can get away with it in comics, but we're used to it. That's why. But if you're paying somebody $50 million to be Tony Stark, you want to see him as Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And you've only got your 2.5 hours, if you're lucky. So it gets very, very, very challenging. The problem with because this is what I was taught by Stan, a group book is, you know, you want to do a group book, you got to have a group interacting. If you flip through the early X-Men, it's amazing how often Jack will do 3 or 4 characters in a panel on a scene. Just and they're all doing different stuff because he's Jack. It's hard to find an artist who can really do groups and who enjoys doing groups and who enjoys doing groups where everybody's on panel and interacting. Dave could do it. Byrne could do it.
I think George Perez did a good job with it. If you want to talk about Crisis on Infinite Earths, it's like, oh yeah, you're doing numbers of multiple teams in panels.
He's brilliant.
But there's I don't want to be too derogatory. I think Mike Zeck is a tremendous artist, and he did Secret Wars. And as we're talking about it on the panel that I did, those panels weren't meant to be blown up and read digitally, because sometimes you kind of cut a little corners when it's like, okay, they're off in the background.
It all depends. You never know who's going to work and who isn't going to work.
Sure.
But the way we did comics back in the 20th century is significantly different from the way comics are choreographed and presented in the modern era. So, everything changes. And are you good with the change or are you not good with the change? Does a writer bond? Is this the kind of writing style or drawing style that's appropriate to the current audience or not? Everything evolves, whether you like it or not. So,
well, and sort of you were talking about the evolution of team dynamics, and I remember reading Avengers at this point. The idea that this is the team presented on Avengers number 300, which is like 1987, 1989, I forget exactly when, and you look at it and you go like, okay, that's Thor's an Avenger. Steve Rogers isn't really Captain America at this point. This is when he had to be, the captain, because
I thought he was Nomad.
That's true. I think then he eventually takes that name, but
and the Forgotten One,
because that's who everybody looked to the Avengers for, was the Forgotten One. Not even saying, but and I think the Druid character ends up on the team. So sometimes you can really shift the lineup so much, whereas with the X-Men, it was fun to add. For me, it was fun that Longshot's here now, and now we have Dazzler.
I wanted to keep evolving the team as I went, with every 100 issues or so, just to make it interesting. But that's a discussion for another time.
It is indeed.
We've been talking for a while, and I've actually got to get to work today. So,
well, I appreciate the time. I guess ChrisClaremont.com and Chris Clearmountain is your Instagram. And you usually post a lot of people who come up to you at those cons in some amazing costumes. So always great to see that.
Some amazing people.
Yes, absolutely. And always amazing to get a chance to talk to you. I told myself I would go under 2 hours and I lied, but only just over. So Chris, I look forward to talking to you soon. And maybe when I hit end recording, I'll pitch my panel to you, but I'll let you get to work. Thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate it.
The pleasure is mine. It was a real treat.
Thank you.